Okay, we are going live now, so we're going to give it a minute for people to trickle in. Oh, wait. Okay, I'm still in the practice session. Oops. Okay, we're all good to go. Thank you very much, communications team. We're going to give it a minute for people to trickle in. My name is Yun Sun. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a director of the China program and co-director of East Asia program here at the Stimson Center. We have an ongoing project on Myanmar that looks at the internal development of the country. The program has been running at Stimson Center since 2013. Okay, I think we have critical mass here. So again, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. Welcome to Stimson's monthly webinar on the issues or on the development related to Myanmar. Since the coup of 2021, the country has been a focal point for a lot of international attention, especially given the civil war and the internal instability of Myanmar. The neighboring countries of Myanmar, China, Thailand, India, have all been affected by the internal chaos that now are increasingly spilling over the border into the other countries. So we have focused a lot in the past about ASEAN's perspective, about China's perspective, and about the US perspective. And today we have had the pleasure to invite an Indian scholar to share with us her observation about where India is in terms of Myanmar's resistance, Myanmar's domestic development. So just to very briefly introduce our speaker of today, we have Ophelia Yumlembam. Hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. And Ophelia is a research assistant at the Department of Political Science at the University of Delhi. She graduated with an MA in political science from the University of Delhi in 2023. Welcome to the field of political science and also of the Myanmar studies. She focuses on developments in Myanmar, Indo-Myanmar relations, India's Act East policy, and the drugs and arms trafficking in India's northeast region. All of these are key topics that we're very eager to explore. So most recently, Ophelia contributed a commentary analytical piece to Stimson's South Asian Voices program. So the link of the piece should be posted by the team in the chat box. Please feel free to click into the link and read Ophelia's analysis on this particular issue. And as a title, she argues that as Myanmar's resistance makes headway, India should reconsider its realpolitik strategy. So that's already super, super interesting that what is the realpolitik strategy, what is India thinking, and what are some of the driving factors of India's policy. So today we are having the pleasure to have Ophelia to give us a brief overview of where India stands in terms of Myanmar's internal development. So Ophelia, thank you so much for joining us. I know that the power seems to be a little unstable, so hope you remain stably online. The screen is yours, and please enlighten us about where India really is on Myanmar. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yunsun. Actually, I made a PPT. I'll just share my screen and so that I can start my presentation.
Please, that would be great. It seems the screen sharing is having a little bit of a difficulty. Is it working?
Yeah, it's working. Just see, where is it?
if you would like to get started, you can send me the PowerPoint and I can share it from my side and you can start your presentation.
Okay. Then I'll just forward this.
Yeah, and I'll catch up.
Okay.
Is it okay?
Yes. It's something wrong here.
Or maybe we'll just dive into the presentation itself, even if it's not shared on the screen.
Okay. Can you please give me like 1 minute?
Hey, Ophelia, are you still there? Hello?
I'm still here. Please give me like 1-2 seconds. I'll just figure this out.
I'm afraid that we're online, so we would prefer that you just dive into the presentation if it is possible.
It's here. Yeah.
Hey,
it's-
Ophelia.
Hold on.
Yes, sir.
Hi.
Can you put your
Hey,
email?
Ophelia, I think we really need to start the presentation. So can we just forget about the PowerPoint and we can just dive into it?
Okay. Can you see my PPT?
No, we cannot.
You can just present it.
I'll just present that here.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Dr. Yunsun, for the introduction, and thank you, Stimson Center China Program, for inviting me to speak on this webinar. I am Ophelia Yumlembam, working as a research assistant at the Department of Political Science, University of Delhi, India. Today, I'll be discussing on India's strategy in Myanmar. So I'll just start my presentation giving a little bit, talking a little bit about the historical background between the two countries. So the country Myanmar lies at the northeast of India, sharing an international land boundary, which is about 1,000 miles, and both the countries also share an maritime international boundary in the Bay of Bengal. So the northeast states of India has a very close linkage in terms of ethnicity and in terms of cultural with the people with the Myanmar. For example, Myanmar is just 100 kilometers from my hometown called Manipur, and we can just cross the international boundary and go up to 16 kilometers without a visa. So is the Myanmar national, they can cross the Indian border without a visa and stay up to a week without a visa. So So during the British rule, both the countries were administered under the British India, and after independence, they remained to stay as a very close friends. By signing the Treaty of Friendship in 1950, the main ambition was to start the bilateral relation, and also they were very close friends. But however, the bilateral relation was went back and forth with the military coup that happened in the 1962 and 1988 in Myanmar, because the India was not India was not ready to help the military rule, and then India was against the humanitarian balance in Myanmar, so the relationship went back and forth. However, in 1990s, when India started opening their industrialization, when the globalization came in the Prime Minister of India launched a policy called Look East policy in 1991. And the signing of the border trade agreement between the two countries in 1994 bring back the relationship again back to normal. So in 2000s, under the policy of Look East policy, India launched two major projects. One is the Kaladan Multi project, which was approved in 2008, and the other one is the India, Myanmar, Thailand Trilateral Highway project, which was approved in 2002. Since the 1990s, both countries were having a lot of high-level visits, and also when the Prime Minister Narendra Modi came into power in 2014, he rebranded and renamed the Look East policy into Act East policy. And he continued the two projects, and he tried to bring more opportunities, more link, more connectivity, more economic integration with the Southeast Asian countries. So until 2021, military coup, India was working with both the ends, that is the National League of Democracy and also with the Tatmadaw. So what is India's Act East policy? India Act East policy is a policy which has like three main ambitions. One is to enhance economic cooperation, trade, connectivity, people-to-people relation with the Southeast Asian country, especially the ASEAN. The second is India's Northeast has been a volatile state since the early 1960s with lots of insurgent activities. So under this Act East policy, India tried to integrate the India's landlocked, less developed Northeast region as a focal point for the economic growth and activity, because the people in Northeast consider the lack of development, infrastructure, and the lack of employment as the one of the major factor for insurgent. And the third one is to counter China's influence in the neighboring Myanmar. China was there before the coup. China is there. China will always be there. But ever since the West imposed sanction on Myanmar, both the countries seems to be very close aligned. China has been working closely with the Myanmar. So is the Myanmar junta working closely with the China. So the next point is why Myanmar is important for India. How do Myanmar fit in India's Act East policy? Myanmar lies in the location that Myanmar is at the tri-junction of the South Asia, Southeast Asia, and East Asia. So Myanmar provides a land gateway for India to expand its land and maritime connectivity to the rest of the Southeast Asian countries and beyond. The next is, on top of that, New Delhi also consider Myanmar as an attractive market and a reliable economic partner for its growing economy, especially for the Northeast markets. And also, ever since the insurgency activities started in the Northeast states, the Northeast insurgent groups has been using the Indo-Myanmar border as a launchpad for attacking the Indian soldier. So since the 1990s, India has been working whoever in the Naypyidaw, whoever is the ruling party, to crack down on the military insurgents in the border area. And also the two main projects under the Act East policy, the Kaladan project and the India, Myanmar, Thailand multilateral highway project. In this Kaladan project, India's tried to link the India's Kolkata port with the Myanmar Sitwe port, and then Myanmar to India's Mizoram state through land and water connectivity. And it is also, the project is also trying to give an alternate route to the strategically very important Siliguri corridor, which is also known as the Chicken Neck corridor, and trying to integrate India's Northeast more with the India's mainland. And the next is India's Myanmar policy post 2021 coup and the Operation 1027. India has been working with both the ends before the coup, but after the military coup, India changes its strategy suddenly. India didn't condemn the military coup. India solely started engaging with the military junta only. which is based on my assumption or analysis that it might be because India see military junta will be stay in power in the foreseeable future. India's commitment to the military junta is evident in supplying military arms and military equipment, which is value up to US $51 million, including the submarine, ammunition, fuel, etc. And also, given the fact that some state-owned enterprises such as the Bharat Electronics, Bharat Dynamics, and Yantra India were among the suppliers, shows India's commitment to the junta. And last year in October 2023, something had happened, something which is very big, which is very big, happened in Myanmar. That is the launch of the Operation 1027 by the three Arakan Army. That is the by the three ethnic armed organization. That is the Arakan Army, the Tang National Liberation Army, and the Myanmar National Democratic Army Alliance. Since the launch of the operation, the junta has been losing ground, especially among the areas of the Indo-Myanmar, Chinese, and Myanmar border, and also the Thailand-Myanmar border. And the Rakhine state, which is very strategically important for India because of the Kaladan project, has been captured most of the township by the Arakan army. So India needs to negotiate with the Arakan army if they want to further the project which India wants. And also even if the military junta losing so many grounds in the Myanmar, the New Delhi has been practicing the same post-coup strategy in Myanmar, which is evident in the India's government decision to send back hundreds of junta soldiers back to the junta-dominated area when they escaped the attacks by the PDF and the ethnic armed organization. And also recently, the India's Joint Director General of Military Intelligence went to Naypyidaw to pay a courtesy call to its counterpart. This shows that India still considered worth engaging with the junta. Here, I'll just point out one point. In March 2024, one of the member of the parliament from Mizoram state met the leaders of the Arakan army to talk about the Kaladan project and also the border security. This might show that New Delhi is realizing the reality in Myanmar, but New Delhi hasn't officially comment on that. And the next is, even though it is so obvious that New Delhi should engage with the pro-democracy group, why hasn't India officially engaged with the pro-democracy group? To my analysis, it might be two reasons. One is New Delhi still considered that engaging with the junta is the best way to counter China's growing influence in the country. This is based on the calculation that despite many setbacks after the Operation 1027, the junta still holds major cities like Naypyidaw, Yangon, and Mantle. And also the fact that the military junta is very much more powerful in terms of military as compared to the pro-democracy group. And the next is the NUG. The next is the NUG has not been strong enough to hold all the armed factions in Myanmar since the 2021 coup. This is because due to the Myanmar complex ethnic complexity, where the individual ethnic armed organizations seek independent control of their own territories. So to my analysis, to my view, New Delhi is practicing a watch and watch approach, hoping that the junta military superiority will allow it to regain control over the lost territories. Next is why should India engage with the pro-democracy group? I'll point out three main points. First is to safeguard India's economic and strategic interest in Myanmar. I have mentioned also about the Kaladan project, where India is trying to connect India's northeast more closely with the mainland India through Myanmar, and also providing an alternate route to the strategically very important Siliguri route. But however, the Indian side is the road development in the Indian side is almost completed, and the Sidway port is also functional. However, the problem is the land road from Myanmar, Paletwa in Rakhine state to the Mizoram state hasn't been completed because due to the Myanmar instability and also the very complex terrain. If India wants to complete the road linkages, it needs negotiation with the Arakan army. And the next is border security. India's border has been very unstable since the past 1 year due to the Manipur violence, and also the influx of the refugee from the Myanmar side. Even the CM of the Manipur consider the incoming of the Myanmar refugee as one of the reason for the Manipur violence. And so more than that, in Mizoram, there has been some cases where the local Mizoram started like attacking the Myanmaris. On top of that, which I have also mentioned earlier, the Northeast insurgent groups have been using the border as a launchpad for insurgent activities against the Indian army. Given the fact that all this Indo-Myanmar border area has been dominated by the EAOs, and they actually have the capacity to prevent the insurgent groups from using this area as a safe haven. And the third is the China factor. The China factor, since the military coup and even before the military coup, India could not compete with the China in Myanmar. And since then, China has been working with both the ends, that is the junta and the ethnic armed organization. China openly supports the junta through diplomatically, economically, and military means. And also they have been engaging with the EAOs, which is evident in the recent illegal crimes along illegal online scams along the India-China, where the China reached out to the MNDAA to help them to crack down the operations there. And also the fact that the NUG stated in an official statement that the NUG will uphold China's infrastructure investment before the coup, and also they committed to the One China policy. More than that, China has been actively facilitated dialogue and communication among the different EAOs, solidifying it as a preeminent foreign actor amidst the country violence. This shows that China has the leverage to influence both the sides, portraying itself as a dependable ally committed to restoring democracy and socio-economic harmony by coordinating with the EAOs. And also, since China is having a very healthy relationship with the ethnic armed organization, China is likely to leverage its relationship with the EAOs, especially the Arakan army, to receive permission and protection to construct the special economic zone in the Rakhine state. This special economic zone will provide China direct access to the Indian Ocean, securing a portion in the India's eastern flank, and also consolidating its maritime footprint in the Bay of Bengal, which is a very major concern for India. So before concluding my presentation, I just want to conclude that India has already started with the engaging with the EAOs, but more needs to be done. More needs to be done in the policy making to establish a meaningful dialogue. Also, given the ground realities, given the tide shifting in the Myanmar, India needs to recalibrate its strategy in Myanmar. India should be more proactive. For example, India should push for a track 1.5 dialogue with the emerging stakeholder, including all the NUG, the the junta and the EAOs, because right now, according to my view, and India is in a dilemma, like where India doesn't know whom to reach out, where to reach out. So it's better for India to keep in touch with all these emerging stakeholders. So if something like if the war unfolds and the pro-democracy growth forms the government, then India should not should use the leverage they have.
Well, great. Thank you, Ophelia. Thank you. That's a very informative and a very comprehensive overview of India's positions, the concerns for India, India's priorities, and also what are some of the potential areas that India could up its game. So we have about 30 minutes for Q&A. We already have several questions streamed in, so I really encourage the audience to post your question using the Q&A functions of the of this platform. So if I can just ask a first question, Ophelia, I really appreciate what you elaborated in terms of the motivation of Indian government's policy towards Myanmar, even after the coup. You mentioned three things: economic relations with Southeast Asia, so Myanmar as a corridor, or as a connectivity link between India and Southeast Asia, the stability of Northeast India, and also this potential China factor. So if these are the motivation of Indian government's policy, then do you see that the current policy are aligned with these priorities? Because one could argue that with instability in Myanmar, then India is very difficult for India to use Myanmar to establish economic ties with Southeast Asia, right? With a civil war and instability going on. And also the question is, the instability of Myanmar also spills over into Northeast India, and we have seen that in Manipur and other locations in Northeast India as well. And then last but not least is China factor. One could argue that India has not competed very successfully or effectively with with China after the coup. So if those are the drivers of Indian policy, I don't do think that India's goals are not really aligned with its approaches.
So I've also mentioned that to my analysis, India is in a dilemma. I mean, India is in a dilemma. India doesn't know where to reach out, whom to reach out, and also India has been caught up with so many things along the border area.
So it's because India is basically in this dilemma that is not able, or it has not been fully mobilized to deal with the issues that the government needs to reach out more to the NUG, to the resistance, to PDF. Is that the best solution?
No, I also want to add this, like, since the situation in Myanmar, the instability is very complex, and no one don't know what is gonna happen. I mean, the NUG is militarily very powerful, and the pro-democracy are very resilient and very coordinating, but no one knows what it's gonna happen, how the civil war unfolds.
I see. So with the uncertainty, India's position is basically is more of a passive position rather than proactively trying to engage and proactively trying to shape the result. Is that the accurate description?
Yes.
Okay, well, great. So I see a question from Hunter about India's Act East policy and desire for greater trade and this conflict with the realpolitik cooperation with the Myanmar military. I think we just covered that question. India is in a dilemma that without a clear future, that India would rather be more passive rather than proactive. There's a question from Voice of America about the competition between India and China, because like what you have pointed out, that India's engagement with the opposition has been less effective, or has been, well, I don't know how effective China's engagement with NUG has been, but how do you view the the situation that can we expect any shift in India's policy towards the resistance? NUG and the other ethnic armed groups, do you expect the Indian government's policy to change down the road towards the resistance, since your paper is about resistance?
I don't think India would shift its strategy very soon, because as I also mentioned, India is doing a wait and watch policy. So India is like trying to see, because the situation in Myanmar can unfold in many ways. I mean, the pro-democracy could win and they could form the government. Also, given the fragility of the Myanmar ethnicity, the military might regain the lost territory. So it's a very complex situation, and I don't think India would shift its strategy very abruptly.
Yeah, so strategically, India is maintaining, keeping its options open, basically.
Yes.
But related to that, if you think about India's policy and what India has been doing with the Myanmar military government, what kind of leverage do you think that India has over the junta? That is this an effective approach, or do you think that India holds critical leverages over the Burmese military? Well, what kind of influence does it have?
So with the Tatmadaw, I think India still has leverage, because recently also I have mentioned that the Indian military general have met with the counterpart, and the fact that I think India and Tatmadaw the relation is still strong, I think.
The relationship is strong. We know that in the past there have been arms sales from India towards Myanmar. To your knowledge, does India have a significant amount of assistance that goes to the Burmese military government?
Pardon?
Oh, China provides military assistance to the Burmese military government. To your knowledge, does India also have the same relationship or the same type of assistance to the Burmese military?
Burmese military in the sense the pro-democracy or the Tatmadaw?
In terms of Tatmadaw.
Yeah, there are several reports that India have been supplying arms and ammunition, such as submarine and then fuel ammunition, to the Tatmadaw. Yeah, there are no like official report from the Indian government, but there are so many other reports saying India is still supplying military support to the government, to the Tatmadaw.
To the Tatmadaw. Okay, well that's good to know. Another question from VOA is about the Indian the recommendation recently from the former Foreign Secretary and Ambassador Kawal Sibal, his recommendation about India appointing a special envoy to Myanmar. That we know that ASEAN has a special envoy on Myanmar, China has one. So India, what is the prospect of India, the Modi government appointing such a special envoy, so that there will be almost a person in charge of the Myanmar portfolio moving forward? Do you see that is that being discussed as a policy option?
I don't think.
Oh, probably not. Because people have not talked about the feasibility or have not considered the utility of that office. Because I'm sure you know that a lot of the countries in the region, especially ASEAN, well, ASEAN and China, they both have special envoys for Myanmar, and India doesn't have one.
Yes, I think it's not because of the feasibility or anything. I think it's because of the current situation in Myanmar.
Okay, there's another question. Since you mentioned the Kaladan project that India seems to be prioritizing, and we also know that the situation in Rakhine State has not been the most stable, especially in the past few months. We saw the Arakan army taking over. We saw some repatriation of the Rohingya refugees. We're also seeing that the conflict between the Arakan army and the Rohingya issue, and even with Bangladesh, being flaring up. So can you explain briefly how the turmoil in Myanmar has affected the Kaladan project? And if the issue is not resolved, what will be the implications for India? That will the project still proceed? Will you see it being delayed, or is scale being curtailed? What are the impact, and what are the Indian potential solution to that impact?
I think other than the Arakan army captured the township around the Sidway port, and the places passes through. Other than that, when the MP from the Mizoram met the Arakan army, they were willing. They said that they are willing to safeguard the Indian projects, the Kaladan project. They would not harm the Kaladan project.
So if the internal turmoil continues in Myanmar, then the Kaladan project there will be security risks associated with it, right?
If the situation backs to normal in the Rakhine state, if the New Delhi reaches out to the Arakan army, I don't see a risks or any complication in proceeding the Kaladan project.
Well, let's assume that if the fighting between Arakan army and the Burmese military intensifies, and the Indians project still proceeds in the Kaladan area, then I think with the ongoing fighting, one, it will be difficult for India to continue to implement the project, and two, by, for example, India establishing closer relationship with Arakan army for the project to continue, that potentially could create some friction with the Burmese military, right? If India reaches out or works with the Arakan army, well, that potentially will create some diplomatic problem for India. That India is stuck between Arakan army on one side and the Burmese military on the other side.
To me, I don't think like the Tatmadaw will react like in the negative way if the India reaches out to Arakan army, because China is doing it, and China is reaching out to the ethnic arm organization also, and China is reaching out to the junta also, and the Tatmadaw is not saying anything on China. And I think if India does that, and I don't think that Tatmadaw will react in a negative way. Also, when the MP from the Mizoram went and meet the Arakan army, there was no statement from the Tatmadaw. So yeah.
Oh, okay. So there's some space for India to maneuver.
Yes,
Got it.
yes.
Okay, well, that'd be really interesting to watch. And then coming to the question of India's economic presence in Myanmar, David Carl has a question that India's economic presence in Myanmar had been surprisingly low, that even Vietnam had more of a presence than India. Is this still the case? Which country has more diplomatic and economic influence in Myanmar than India? Well, I guess people will say China.
Yeah.
So I have always had this question as well, that India has this well, first is a look east policy, so India was only looking, and now it is act east policy. But India's economic presence in Myanmar is still relatively low if you compare it to the rhetoric that we see that India is engaging Myanmar, India is engaging in Southeast Asia. So what do you think explains that low level of economic presence by India? Is it because of the instability if it were even before the civil war, even under the NLD government, the Indian economic presence in Myanmar was not particularly high. So it doesn't seem to be critically affected by the military coup or the instability. So what do you think that is the reason that India is just not there economically?
Okay, to me, like both the projects under the ACIS policy, both the Kaladan project and the trilateral highway project has been launched in the early 2000s, and till now, the projects could not get completed and had passed like several deadlines. And to me, I think India is trying to see if it is like worth investing in Myanmar, since the first two projects they launched is still hung there and could not get completed. And for if I want to add for the border trade between the India and Myanmar, it is very low as compared to China. One of the reason is because in India's northeast is very less developed, and it takes a lot of time to come to get the resources, even if from the man's land. So there is very less in terms of resource exchange. And like even if we go to the More market, which is at the Tammu border, we can see there is nothing in the Indian market. And if we go to the Namhalong market, we can see all the various types of very cheap, very things. So in terms of the border trade, it is because of the difficult terrain to bring the resources from the mainland. And yeah.
So I think you really pointed out something important, which is that India's connection or the border with Myanmar is through the northeast region of India, which is relatively less developed compared to the rest of India. So if there's going to be more border trade, is border trade with whom? It will have to connect with but it gets to the tricky question of the relationship between India, the main body, and the northeast portion of India. So without that being remedied, that potentially India will continue to face challenges down the road with its development of economic relations with with Myanmar, right? Yeah. So you talked a lot about the you have assessed Indian government's policy pretty well. We know that since the coup and since given the inflow of refugees into India since the coup, what can you tell us about the views of Indian public opinion about Myanmar? We know the government has adopted this realpolitik thinking. We're going to work with the junta. But how about the Indian general public? Do they support the resistance? Do they support the military? Are they more prone to see this through the lens of competition with China? What is the Indian public view of Myanmar and the internal turmoil?
Do you mean Indian public in the sense of the whole India or some parts of Northeast India, or?
I think we're interested in both. So it seems that there is a difference between the public opinion in Northeast India about Myanmar and the rest of India, right? I think that distinction will be very interesting to hear as well.
Okay. And I think for maybe for both the whole India and the general Indians and the Northeast India, they wanted the stability of the Myanmar situation. They want the stability, especially in the Northeast region. They want Myanmar to come back to stability so that the refugee can go back. And and Indians have always been supported for the Myanmar transition of the Myanmar transition to the federal democracy. Yes.
So if they are in general supportive of return to stability and return to federal democracy, are they critical of the Indian government's relationship with the junta? Is that an issue, or that doesn't really come up because it's such a small minor issue?
I would say people did question about the India's relation with the Tatmadaw, but it didn't come up as such. I mean, if you look at the India's Northeast region, India Northeast like doesn't care about much care less about the India's strategy with the Myanmar, because they have been caught up with their own problems in case of the Myanmar and Mizoram. So is the yeah.
I see. So they're not as concerned. There's a question from Adam Burke. Hi, Adam from Asia Foundation. Adam's question is, are there any signs that India's policy is shifting given the level of instability? SAC, the military junta, has been losing control of the border. And also, I think there is a widespread recognition that SAC is not winning. Maybe they're not being driven out of power either, but they are not winning this civil war. So Thailand, for example, has significantly shifted its position in the past 6 months, and we'll see how far they will shift. But are there signs that India's policy is shifting? You mentioned that India is engaging or reaching out to NUG and other ethnic groups. So do you see that as indicating a significant shift of India's position towards the military government?
Oh, it's very confusing in the sense that to me the MP from the member of parliament from the Mizoram went and met the Arakan army. I think it was more of a state initiations, and there was no official statement from the New Delhi. So but it might also put it this way, like the MP who went and met the Arakan army was from the political party who joined the collaboration in the central. So it might show a sign that India is finally seeing the reality in the Myanmar, but other than that, India hasn't shown any signs.
I see. So it's more of a local government or local politician outreach to AA, but it doesn't indicate, or you haven't seen the signal of Indian central government changing policy, right?
Yes.
Okay. That's great to know. Because I had the same question, that is India becoming more involved or more forward-leaning in terms of relationship with the resistance. Can you say something about the Indian perspective on the Chin Land Council project? We know that the Chin state has been very progressive in terms of the development of their own organizations, their own management councils. Do you think that India has a specific position on this particular issue?
Can you please repeat the question?
So are you aware of India having specific views about the Chin Land Council project? Probably
No.
not. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
then let me change the question. We know that the international community has had some difficulty in terms of delivering humanitarian assistance across the border. So there have been a relatively robust humanitarian presence on the Thai-Myanmar border through the UN, through the border consortium. So earlier on, there had been an effort trying to channel humanitarian assistance from the Indian border towards Myanmar. But we haven't seen much development in that regard. So what do you think are the obstacles that have hindered cross-border humanitarian aid operations from the Indian border?
I think the instability in the Indian border is could one of the reasons. As I have also mentioned, out of four, two of the bordering states, that is the Mizoram and Manipur, have been unstable since the past 1 year. Manipur because of the violence, and Mizoram because of the number of influx coming. And yeah, in Mizoram, the state government has been like giving shelter and humanitarian aid to the refugee who cross the border and come to Mizoram. But in case of Manipur, there's no such measure because there because the state itself has been under the instability. So
so let me make sure that I understand. So you're saying that the Indian border towns and the border regions have seen a major influx of refugees, right?
yes.
So are they accepting international assistance locally?
No, they are of like state initiative, not the international aid.
So it's a state initiative. So so India has been refusing or not accepting international aid for these refugees. So how about international aid from the Indian border into Myanmar? The background of the question is that international community has been able to bring international aid into Myanmar through the Thai border. So there has been a question that India could let the same thing happen, right? Let international aid to go into Myanmar from the Indian side of the border. But so far, it has not really taken off. So in your view, that why would India not allow international assistance to go from India into Myanmar?
I think India itself does not have a national policy for refugee, and India, if you heard it, like in the state of Manipur, the refugee coming from the Myanmar has been deported back to the Myanmar. So if India doesn't have a policy on refugee and India doesn't want to accept the refugee, then how is it gonna possible?
Yeah, so it's not, you don't see it as feasible.
Yes.
Or do you think is not in line with India's relationship with the military? I'm trying to figure out why is India reluctant? That is it because of the concern for the military government's reaction, or is that India across the board doesn't let international aid to come to China to India's border region?
It could be both, but I could not just point out that this is the one, but it may be both. It may not be the reason, but I could not just point out that this is this.
Okay, that would be really interesting. You mentioned earlier there are a couple of questions here about the issue of AA, India's relationship with the Arakan army. Well, there are several questions about it. There's a question about why is India not providing aid or assistance to the Arakan army if India wants the AA or ULA to protect the Kaladan project. And there's another related question is that the Arakan army has had a very close relationship with, well, relatively close relationship with China. So if India is engaging Arakan army, do you think that this will become a friction issue between India and China? Because China has a long-standing relationship with Arakan army. So two questions. Why is India not providing assistance to Arakan army if India needs Arakan army? And two, India's relationship with Arakan army would be potentially a problem because of AA's existing relationship with China. What is India's policy on the AA then?
For the Arakan army, I think as I also mentioned, India is doing a wait and watch policy. So they are either not sure where to extend, where to give the cooperation, and in terms of like, in terms of your question asking, is there going to be a friction between India and China if the India helps Arakan army? I don't think there won't be a friction because Arakan army itself is calling India to recalibrate its strategy, and in Arakan army is showing signs for India to engage with them. So I don't think it won't be a friction between India and China if Arakan army is willing to work with the India.
Okay, that's great to know. Well, I know that for your work, you also look into the illegal trafficking or the arms trafficking and also drug trafficking across the border between India's northeast and Myanmar. So here's a question from Praveen Dongthi about how is the Myanmar conflict affecting the situation in Manipur? Are we seeing evidence of arms and ammunition finding its way into Manipur and the rest of the Indian Northeast? So how are the relations between the militant outfits from Manipur and the Myanmar, the Burmese junta? So I know that in the past there were speculations about arms going into Nagaland, going into Indian Northeast from Kachin state. But now with the influx of refugees into Manipur, are we seeing a connection between arms trafficking or more weapons going into Indian Northeast because of the internal chaos in Myanmar?
There has been no reports, not reports regarding the arms trafficking into the Northeast, but there has been a lot of cases regarding the drug trafficking from Myanmar into the Northeast. Like, there has been so many cases in Mizoram because the Manipur Myanmar border has been sealed. There has been a lot of cases of drug trafficking in Myanmar. The police has been caught so many drugs. Yeah. And in terms of the armed trafficking, there is no such report right now. For
Okay.
now.
For now. And it has been 3+ years, so you haven't seen the evidence that the arms trafficking are going into Indian Northeast.
Yes.
Oh boy, that's positive and puzzling at the same time. How about India-Bangladesh cooperation? Because Bangladesh has been very keen on repatriate some of the Rohingya refugee, and you could argue that India and Bangladesh share some common concerns about the refugee situation and the border control. Do you see growing cooperation between India and Bangladesh on the issue of Myanmar?
On the issue of Myanmar, I haven't seen any cooperation between them. In fact, there has been a report on the PM of the Bangladesh asking China to help issue the issue of the Myanmar so that there won't be any new Rohingya coming to Bangladesh.
But for the border control, well, it becomes because even China is talking to Bangladesh about border control and repatriation of Rohingyas, right? So
Yes.
it's why is India not more active on this particular issue? Why do you think that is? India has other priorities. Because we know that traditionally India is very sensitive about
Yes.
China's relationship with Bangladesh, with the rest of the South Asian region. But now here's an active issue that that India and Bangladesh share a common concern, and China is very actively involved in this. But we don't see that India taking a more proactive approach. So I'm really curious of why do you think that is the case?
I'll just stick to my arguments of India is in a dilemma and India is doing a wait and watch policy. Wait and watch approach. I mean, yeah, I'll just stick to that.
Okay, well, these are no easy questions, but I think you have made your assessment very clear that India is basically in a dilemma with Myanmar, with the Myanmar situation. It has adopted a wait and see attitude because it doesn't know that which way the end game is going. And if I can summarize what you have already commented on, India also believes that it does not need to take a super proactive or forward-leaning position on Myanmar, that it can sit back and more passively react to what is happening. But at the same time, India does have the concern with the refugee situation that has spilled over into Indian Northeast. and India has primarily taken a local approach, meaning managed and initiated by the local government towards the refugee issue, rather than letting international communities to come in and take over the or be more dominant in that campaign. I hope that summarizes your insights well, and we really appreciate your sharing with us your observation on the ground in India about the relationship between India and Myanmar. These are rare insights that people outside the region or people outside India or outside Myanmar could get. So we really appreciate your writing the piece for the South Asia Voices program here at Stimson, and also to join us. Thank you for joining us today and share with us your analysis and observations. As these situations are evolving extremely quickly, so we hope that in the future, as the situation evolves, we will have the honor to bring you back and maybe give us an update of India's policy towards Myanmar. So hope that is okay. Thank you so much, Ophelia. Thank you for joining us. Really appreciate your insights and taking the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yun.